I think for a lot of people there would be, the question of why this hasn't happened sooner, and probably a lack of surprise that it has happened at all. The big shock is Christian for the longest time has been Red Bull. So it has to be more than a simple drop off in performance. They've been there before. They've been through this before. So there must be more. There is more at play here, and I think that's obvious to everyone.
Hello everybody, welcome back to The Fast and the Curious. We have absolutely scrambled for this one. We are bringing you an emergency episode. It's Betty Glover here and Christian Hewgill. And Christian, it does not get any bigger than this, does it?
This is massive, this is colossal, this is huge breaking news. I think, other than Lewis Hamilton shocking the Formula One world by announcing his move to Ferrari, I think this is the biggest Formula One news to break in years, decades maybe. It is huge. The breaking news this morning is that Christian Horner, after 20 years in charge of Red Bull Racing, has been sacked. He has left the team immediately. Christian Horner is no longer the team principal of Red Bull Racing. Wow.
Yeah, wow. You've taken the words right out of my mouth because... Oh, wow. So I was in the gym when we started hearing these rumblings. I quickly ran out of the gym. You were about to leave the house and go to the gym. We were literally like, right, there's only one thing we need to do right now. We need to grab the microphones and we need to get going. Look, this is a shock, isn't it? But there's obviously been a lot of sort of media attention, a lot of stories, a lot of headlines coming out of Red Bull sort of over the past year or so, rumours of discontent, etc., etc. So how much of a surprise is this?
Look, this is a massive surprise. There's no doubt about that. You're right, Betty. You'll have heard me say on this podcast that Christian Horner's job could come under threat this year. And the reason for that is this is a Formula One team that's gone from unprecedented dominance. In the first year of this podcast, we week after week had to say to people who are new to Formula One, this isn't usual. This is a shock. This doesn't usually happen. They've gone from that historic level of dominance to collapsing, to losing key people around the team, key members of staff, to not only falling away from having the quickest car, but to having a car that without a superhuman generational talent, probably the best ever to do it in Max Verstappen, wouldn't be anywhere near capable of fighting for podiums. Other drivers struggled to get it in the points. So that's why, in one sense, it's not a surprise at all. In any form of top-level sport, the person in charge has to take the rap for collapses in form like that. But the Formula One paddock is a small place. You know, Betty, I'm lucky to be a part of it. You get rumours, you get utterings, you get murmurs when big stuff is starting to happen. And I can assure you, at the British Grand Prix, nobody was saying Horner could go this week. Nobody at all.
Yeah, it's like Gossip Girl on Heat, isn't it? The paddock, like everyone's chatting about everything. But yeah, this is crazy. What do we know for sure then? What are the facts?
The facts are Red Bull released a statement. We're recording this Wednesday morning. Earlier this morning, Red Bull released a statement. Let's read it. It says, Red Bull has released Christian Horner from his operational duties with effect from today. Notice there is no attempt to sort of say, it's mutual consent that we've agreed a departure. This is, we have released Christian Horner. Now, that is key in itself. Red Bull are quite happy to turn around and say, he's gone. The statement continues to say, we would like to thank Christian Horner for his exceptional work over the last 20 years. And this is from Oliver Mintzlaff, Red Bull's Chief Executive of Corporate Projects and Investments. Goes on to say, with his tireless commitment, experience, expertise and innovative thinking, he's been instrumental in establishing Red Bull Racing as one of the most successful and attractive teams in F1. Thank you for everything, Christian. You will forever remain an important part of our team's history. So on the one hand, it's a very warm statement. It congratulates Christian Horner for what nobody can deny a huge achievement. But it does say, listen, he's been sacked. My understanding, and the understanding of many other Formula One journalists, is this came about very suddenly and staff were told in a meeting early Wednesday morning, is my understanding. So again, I said that few people were discussing this around British Grand Prix weekend. Here we are the Wednesday after the race. This wasn't expected.
This is huge, considering that he's been with Red Bull since they were made into a Formula One team. 20 years is unbelievable. He's like the fabric of this Red Bull team, isn't he? So it's going to be a massive change for them, isn't it?
Yeah, I want to talk about that a moment, because nothing like Red Bull had ever happened in Formula One before. This is a team that 20 years ago came into Formula One when it was dominated by big name manufacturers like Ferrari and Mercedes. Then you had plucky sort of independent teams like Jordan back in the day, like Williams. But rarely, or well, no, never had you had a Formula One team that, this is a drinks brand, right, who do lots of extreme sports in order to market their brand and their product. But the fact they bought the old Jaguar team to turn it into this Formula One team and came in saying, we're not just here to make up the numbers and sell some soft drinks, we're here to win, was unprecedented. And at the front of that, right from those early days, was this young, bold, as the statement said, innovative thinking team principal in Christian Horner. He has been Red Bull. He has been inseparable from the brand that is Red Bull Racing. And he's done a fantastic job. You know, he's guided them to two unprecedented spells of success with Verstappen and Vettel. And obviously, when the Vettel era ended and the Hamilton era came in, he rebuilt them and they went back to dominating and winning ways. Of course, it wasn't just Christian Horner. There was a big lot of people around him. But as you say, he has been at the heart of this team for so long. That all changes from the 9th of July. It's historic.
It's also worth saying, off the back of all of that ridiculous Red Bull success, Red Bull were taking the headlines, weren't they? A lot of people were talking about them, and not in the best light either. And this all comes 17 months after Horner was accused of sexual harassment and coercive controlling behaviour by a female employee. It's worth saying that he's twice been cleared of that claim by the team's parent company. But that has definitely, I guess, put a cloud over Red Bull in recent months, recent years, the last couple of seasons, hasn't it? Do you think that might possibly have something to do with this? And also, it's worth saying, a lot of our fans, I think, have been messaging us on social media, and they're saying that, you know, that they're quite happy about the fact that this has finally happened.
There's no doubt that this will be popular with certain sections of the Formula One fandom. There's no doubt about that. Let's establish the facts here, do our due diligence as journalists. These accusations came out, as you say, Betty, it was around 17 months ago. Red Bull launched an investigation. Red Bull say there was 2 investigations. Red Bull carried out the investigation with its own parent company. It wasn't an FIA investigation. It wasn't an independent investigation, which sometimes you see in these matters. It was a Red Bull investigation. Red Bull insisted he was cleared. Christian Horner always denied those claims. However, this undoubtedly had an unsettling effect on the team. And this came after a period where Red Bull's dominance seemed to start falling. You know, we need to look at, to me, everything changed after the Miami Grand Prix 2024. That was when Lando Norris won his first race, and it was all of a sudden very clear that Red Bull had the quickest car, and they only won the World Championship last year, the Drivers' World Championship, that is, because of Max Verstappen's superhuman talents. Now, from there, key members of Red Bull staff departed. We're talking about the likes of Jonathan Wheatley, who's now Sauber team principal. We're talking about the likes of Adrian Newey. We did an emergency episode of the podcast at the time saying just how massive that legend of the sport, the guy who's as lucrative as a top-level driver, left the team. Other people had left as well. And there was starting to be a feeling that, look, is that linked to all the sort of unsettlements that happened around those accusations? We will, I don't think, ever know for a fact whether that did unsettle people to the extent that they decided, that's it, I don't want to be part of this team anymore. There are journalists within the paddock who have reported that was the case. Whatever happened, there was a period of huge, as I say, unsettlement. I don't even think that's a word, but you know what I mean. There was a big load of unsettlement. Let's go for it. All of that was happening at the time. Red Bull lost key people. The performance has gone, which has taken us to where we are today. So it also at the top of Red Bull is a complicated power system. You did have the boss of Red Bull as a whole, Dietrich Mateschitz, who sadly passed away recently. You have Helmut Marko, Red Bull's sort of driver coaching chief who looks after the drivers' decisions. You have Christian Horner, and you also have the huge influence of not just Max Verstappen, but his father, Jos. And it was that time of those allegations that power struggle did start to happen. So whether it is directly linked to those accusations, who knows? But listen, that was around the time where it looked like the house of cards of Red Bull Racing was starting to fall.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. That really did feel like the turning point, didn't it? The other thing that I think that we have got to mention, which is sort of the elephant in the room, or I think this is the first thing that is going to be coming to people's minds, is Max Verstappen. What is the situation there? Because there's been so much uncertainty around his contract situation. Is Max Verstappen staying? Is he leaving? Does he want to stay at Red Bull? So now I think, naturally, a lot of people are going to be thinking, is this linked? We've had a couple of questions in. One person said, do you think this means Red Bull have already lost match, or is this a last-ditch attempt to already keep him? Somebody else said, do you reckon that this is an ultimatum from Max? Either he goes or I walk at the end of the season.
Well, listen, stranger things have happened. It is quite possible that the Verstappen family have demanded that Horner goes. The truth is, as we're recording this podcast now, we don't know. In the coming hours, days, weeks, maybe even months, I suspect, because this is what usually happens in Formula One, I suspect more details will come out. Let's establish the facts and let's establish what we know. Christian Horner was the team principal of Red Bull Racing. His key talisman was Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen was very happy at Red Bull Racing. The reason being, Red Bull gave him the quickest car. Now Red Bull don't have the quickest car. So Max is thinking long term, am I going to be able to win world championships when I'm at Red Bull? Well, I don't know what he's thinking. I'm not Max Verstappen, and I'm not the sort of journalist that likes to speculate on what drivers are thinking. But I can tell you what I'm thinking. Do I see any way Red Bull are going to get back to the top anytime soon? No. They've lost key people like Adrian Newey, like Jonathan Wheatley. They don't know what to do with the second seat. They had an experienced, good Formula One driver in Sergio Perez who couldn't drive that car. They had a promising, fast rookie in Liam Lawson, who not only couldn't drive it, but got on disastrously with it. They made the bold claim after approximately 7 minutes of this Formula One season to replace him with Yuki Tsunoda, a driver who they have never thought was capable of driving for the top team. But all of a sudden, because you might as well roll the dice to see what's happening, they're going to stick Yuki in. And then next year, as I keep banging on about on the podcast, the series becomes more engine dependent next year. And all the hints we're having is that, and here's the key word here, Mercedes are looking like they've got the strongest engine going into next season. So is Max Verstappen thinking, well, hang on a minute, not only have I not got the quickest car at the moment, but is there any signs that Red Bull can get me back to the top? Well, if I don't see that, I'm fairly sure Max Verstappen doesn't see that unless he knows something we don't know. And therefore, if you're a Red Bull boss, if you're one of the board level, you're thinking, well, hang on a minute, if we've lost Max, what exactly have we got? We've got an undrivable car, we've got uncertainty going into the new technical regulations. We've lost great drivers like Albon or certainly very solid drivers like Albon and Gasly and all the other people they've burnt through and ruined their careers. We've now got up-and-coming promising talents like Lindblad and Hadjar. Are we going to lose them as well? If you've not got Max Verstappen, what have you got if you're Red Bull Racing, other than some largely disgusting tasting fizzy drinks? That's pretty much all you've got. So
they've got a lot of energy, Christian.
Well, yeah, they're going to need it, I can tell you. So where Max is at the moment, I don't know. But as I keep saying on the podcast, there's no smoke without fire. George Russell's having the best season of his life. He's not signed a new contract. Toto is going back into full flirt mode like he did last year when Lewis announced his retirement. It's not his retirement. He's not retired yet. This is not this breaking news podcast. Lewis hasn't retired. He went to Ferrari. I mean, at some point, it might as well be the same thing this season. But regardless, that's. Toto is now getting back into flirting like he did when Lewis announced he was going to Ferrari. It could be the case. Is it a ploy to hold on to Max? Is it the Verstappen family giving an ultimatum? Is it them rolling the dice? We don't know quite yet.
Well, on that, this has just dropped from Max Verstappen's manager, and this is according to Des Telegraph, who are usually very reliable when it comes to everything Red Bull. So apparently, Max Verstappen's manager statement says this: "We were informed in advance about this decision by Red Bull management. It's up to Red Bull to expand on why they did this. We continue to focus on the sporting side and are looking for more performance so we can return to the top. In that sense, nothing changes." Now that's interesting.
It is interesting. It's what you'd expect them to say. I mean, it's interesting in the sense that seems to hint that, as we've said, it's not some sort of ultimatum. That's literally just come through as we're recording this, by the way. So that would suggest that it's not some sort of ultimatum. But again, they would say that, wouldn't they? They're not going to turn around and go, well, we said that we wanted Christian out. I tend to be on the more trusting side of things, that if they've turned around and said, we were told about this by Red Bull management, I'd expect that to be the case. But there's nothing else they can say at this stage other than, we'll continue to try and improve the car. But what you can take from that, as I'm sort of live reacting to it, is, well, A, they would say that, but on the flip side, I sort of tend to believe them, because why would they lie? They could always stay silent. They could always come out in a week's time and say, we felt a change had to be made because it was getting worse. So, I mean, listen, Max will continue on the sporting side. No one's really bringing massive upgrades between now and the end of the season. There will be little tweaks between now and the end of the season. But let's be honest, Max knows he's not going to win this championship. Red Bull know they're not going to win this year's Constructors' Championship. So as I said earlier, Max and Red Bull are already looking to the future. So to me, Max is looking to the future to go, well, can I win next year? And as I say, I don't think they can. So it's all very interesting.
It's going to be so interesting to see what Max does now, because there was all that chat, wasn't there? And you've sort of touched on this as well, haven't you? That Max was just a bit like unsettled by all of everything that was going on with Red Bull. That's obviously very distracting as a driver. You don't want to be caught up in that. Max definitely doesn't. So it'll be, it's just going to be so interesting to see what Max does. Is he going to stay? Is he going to go? Let's talk about what Red Bull's going to look like now, though, Christian, under, their new team principal.
Yeah, so Laurent Mekies has been promoted from the second team Racing Bulls. He was previously racing director at Ferrari. This is his second season, am I right? Yes, I am. Second season in charge of RB. Has done a very solid job, actually. They were at one point really struggling with sort of like the slowest car. They've been on a bit of an upward trend into getting a car that certainly Isaac has been able to put in the points this season. They're not quite as high up as where they'd expect to be, but they're on an upward trend. And also he's been in charge of leading a restructure of the team where they sort of simplify their operations, bring some of it slightly closer to Red Bull Racing. So there's been a lot of behind the scenes changes that he's been a big part of. And obviously being racing director of Ferrari, he's got huge experience. Whether that is a temporary interim manager role until the end of the season or even short term, maybe beyond that, who knows? And then Alan Permain has been promoted to team principal of Racing Bulls. He was their racing director. Alan Permain's been around the sport years. So what's very good for Red Bull is they've got two very respected figures here who can just slot in and keep everything going in the meantime. So that's good from a Red Bull Racing perspective that they've got these two respected figures. So that's what it's going to look like. As I say, would I take that right now as Laurent's going to be in charge forever and a day? Quite possibly. We've seen Ferrari appoint Fred Vasseur from what was Alfa Romeo, what is now Sauber, Fred, and Alfa Romeo were sort of operating under Ferrari, not in the sort of way that Red Bull does, but there is that working relationship there, and we've seen Fred step up. So it's far from beyond the realms of possibility. We've also seen success with the likes of Jonathan Wheatley coming from smaller roles, and James Vowell. So it's quite possible that he'll stay in charge. At this stage, I think all that we know is he's going to be in charge for the next few races or so, and they'll carry on.
Wild. Katie got in touch. She says, "Hi guys, I've got a question following the news that Horner has been sacked. Do you think that Laurent Mekies becoming Red Bull team principal will save Yuki from being replaced? He's worked with him for a long time and knows how good he is," which is a good point.
I don't think so. Certainly, Christian Horner has never fancied Yuki Tsunoda in the main Red Bull seat. And certainly there was a feeling that because Yuki hadn't been promoted for as long as he had and then was doing what was, effectively a bad job in this Red Bull, that his time was coming to an end. It certainly throws him a lifeline. I would be still very, very surprised if Yuki ends up in that seat next year. But it's possible, because if they're in turmoil with having to do a new, bring in a new team principal and they lose Max as well, they might just need an experienced driver, which Yuki is. So it's possible, I guess you could say.
This whole thing is just wild, isn't it? Because Horner is Red Bull. He is Red Bull. So without him, what is this team? What are they going to be like? What are they going to stand for? And I guess my other question is, how do they rebuild their reputation after this? Because they had so much success, but within the last year, their reputation has sort of been torn apart, losing all those massive names. Where do they go?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Betty. And in terms of my view on the whole thing, I think it's a good decision from Red Bull Racing.
Do you?
I think, I do. I think it was, the timing surprises me, but an exit was starting to feel inevitable to me. We've obviously been through the disruption of 17 months ago. He somehow rode that wave and calmed that storm and must have had backing from management on high in order to be able to do that. But as you rightly said, that was such disruption for your employees, for your people coming into that factory in Milton Keynes every day, for team morale, for people around the paddock. It was all that was being spoken about. And who knows, maybe it did directly lead to some key departures. As I say, people will make up their own minds on that. So to have ridden out that storm and then be in a situation where the car has fallen off a cliff, where there's turmoil in that second seat, and where, as I say, I just don't really see them being able to go forward from here. I sort of think it was inevitable that this felt like time for a change in order for the team to restore its reputation, and also just for some new thinking. 20 years is a long time in charge of a team, but I'd lost any faith that Horner and the team were going to be able to turn this round again. Because even when, all right, the last time I said this on the podcast, people were like, well, you weren't calling for Toto Wolff's head when Mercedes went from quickest to not being quickest. Well, no, because there's not been anywhere near the level of turmoil. Yes, they lost Lewis Hamilton, but George Russell and Kimi Antonelli are a very solid driver pairing. Yes, they're not the quickest team anymore, but they're not far off. They never were looking like they were falling out of the points like Red Bull have managed to do. And there was nothing but professionalism oozing from that team in Toto Wolff. So there was nowhere near the turmoil when Mercedes lost their crown. I just think it had become too many storms. It was too much of a distraction. And the team also, let's be honest, Betty, cards on the table here, with fans of this podcast, Red Bull are immensely unpopular. My DMs, the podcast's DMs, when this news broke, was full of people going, thank goodness. That's not good for a team. This is a team that is in the sport to promote its brand, to promote global sales of a product. This is a team that competes in other forms of extreme sports really successfully. And this is a team that did have a sort of lovable rogue rock star, rock and roll party image, not dissimilar to the Jordan team led by the late great Eddie Jordan of 20 years ago. And we've seen that reputation slowly fall into what is now a team largely disliked. And I think a lot of that has come from Christian Horner. So if that starts to have a commercial impact, this also could be a commercial decision. I think it was the right decision for Red Bull to move on. And to go to your point, Betty, they will now need to form a completely new identity around a completely new team principal and potentially a completely new lead driver.
That is a very good point. In my opinion, I agree. I think it's the right thing to do, but I also feel like they've done it way too late. I feel like they should have done this earlier. Their reputation now has gone. It's been so damaged anyway from this past year for so many numerous different things. I feel like they should have done this last year. I think it should have happened. It should have happened earlier. And then I don't think they'd be in the position that they're in. But they can rebuild. Red Bull fans, it's not over. You can get back up there. It's all right. Have a little bit of faith. Change is good.
Change is good. Maybe they should have done it earlier. Yeah, it's hard to think that a decision coming any earlier would have had a more negative impact. It's hard to think that if they'd got rid of Horner 17 months ago, if they'd got rid of Horner over the winter, whatever, that they'd be in any worse place than they are now. I certainly don't think the chaos around the second seat helps. I certainly don't think the decision to put Lawson in and replace, to put Tsunoda in and replace Lawson so quickly has helped. So I actually think, Betty, your view isn't an uncontroversial one. It's hard to see how it could have gone much worse. In terms of the future, the big thing they're going to need to do now is cling on to dear life for Max Verstappen. He will need to see solid proof and evidence that Red Bull can improve. I'm not seeing that. Someone we've not spoken about who will be key to all of this, and I'm really interested to know what his role is in all of this, is Helmut Marko. Red Bull have an unusual setup in that they've got this big, powerful figure in Helmut. I saw, and this is nothing but a rumour, but we've seen rumours that Sebastian Vettel could come involved in the team in some sort of Helmut Marko role. And I saw a tweet earlier, completely unverified, someone saying, oh, well, I'd heard that Horner has been trying to get Vettel into that Marko role to get rid of Helmut Marko to secure his position within the sort of power of Red Bull Racing, within the sort of government structure of Red Bull Racing. Maybe there has been a power play that's gone wrong and therefore Christian Horner has played the wrong card. Again, I suspect the details will come out over time. But what does Helmut Marko think? Because Max and Helmut are very, very close. There is this politics power play at the top of Red Bull. It's all very interesting, but attention will turn to them now. Operation Keep Max Verstappen. Is that too late? Has he already decided he's going to Mercedes? Could he have a break next year and let everything cool and see how the new regulations shape up? I wouldn't put that past Max at all. I think it's all very interesting.
Can I just say something as well? Stepping out of my shoes as a sports journalist and a sports broadcaster, but just as a female fan, I don't know how it sits with me, but the fact that Horner has now been sacked because of performance, the performance side of things.
Well, we don't know that. We don't know that.
Well, we don't know that, but that's sort of what I'm assuming.
That's the hint.
That's the hint. And I don't know how well it sits with me that, this didn't happen when he was going through, when the scandal was happening and when he was accused of everything that he was accused of. And I know that he denied those accusations, but as a female fan in this sport, it doesn't sit very comfortably with me. It's quite hard being a female fan, witnessing everything that this has happened. And I'm sure there's a lot of female fans that will feel the same. It's a bit weird. It's a bit of a weird feeling. And don't get me wrong, I understand so much happens, the whole legal side around it all. You can't make snap decisions. There'll be reasons why certain things have happened. But it's all a bit odd, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
I think
I articulated.
I know exactly what you mean. We are journalists, as you know, Betty, and we have to say there was an investigation. He was cleared of the allegations. He denied the allegations, but Christian Horner carrying on in his role made a lot of people feel uncomfortable and certainly contributed to the sort of ill feeling of the team. So yeah, it's a tricky one.
Okay, good chat, Christian. Thank you very much. I am going to go because I've got to go to work, and honestly, I am running incredibly bloody late. But you're going to replace me with someone who is very well experienced in the F1 world. Will Buxton's going to come on.
Will Buxton is in Florida and has just woken up to this news. Like it's 12:16 UK time, so it's first thing in the morning UK time. Betty, you've got to go to work. You go.
I can't wait to hear what Will Buxton has to say about this. So good luck, have fun. I'm going to go. Will Buxton's coming in.
Thanks, pal. Enjoy chatting. Go well. Go well with work. All right. Bye, Betty.
Bye. Before we get back to this episode, if you've been enjoying the Fast and the Curious, listening to the drivers and thinking, do you know what? I want to have a bit of that. I want to go to a Grand Prix. Then we have got the perfect thing for you, haven't we, Christian?
And those perfect things are Gulliver's Travel. They're not things, they're lovely people. Gulliver's Travel sort out all the faff of going to a Grand Prix. So if you decide, I want to go to a Formula One race, but I want to focus purely on enjoying and soaking up the atmosphere, Gulliver's Travel will sort out all the faff and logistics, so you can just focus on having a nice time. It's wonderful.
They sort out literally everything. Flights, hotels. When you're there, you're going to have a Gulliver's Travel person with you to help you through everything. And you've been looking at the website.
I've been looking at the website, and I like the fact they have people that help you get to the track as well. That's the bit where I always go wrong. You get to your hotel and you think, oh, this is fantastic. Then you wake up the following morning like, I actually need to get to the Formula One place, and that stresses me out. But I've been looking on the website, and they have fantastic packages for Qatar, because that's one of those places where I'd be like, I have no idea how to get to Qatar.
Well, that is in November, but you're being incredibly organised for yourself by looking at that already.
Gotta be organised. Formula One is all about the fine margins and the details. So if you want to get yourself organised and look for races in the future, like Qatar, head to the Gulliver's Travel website. It is gulliverstravel.co.uk. They've got all sorts of packages, and you can customise packages to suit you by just giving the lovely people a ring, and they will help you out in whatever way that you need.
Guys, get on it. Right, back to the podcast.
Welcome back to the Fast and the Curious. We are doing an emergency episode reacting to the breaking massive news that Christian Horner is no longer the team principal of Red Bull Racing. Joining us from Florida, Mr. Will Buxton. Oh, stop it. Just show us where you are and tell us, for those not watching on YouTube.
I'm in Florida. I'm in Boynton Beach, which is about an hour away from Miami. I've set myself up here for the next month because there's an IndyCar race every single weekend, and I knew it would be pointless trying to fly home for like 24 hours in between every race. So I'm out here with family. It's not bad, mate.
There are palm trees. There are palm trees. There is a
We're
pool.
by the pool.
Oh.
It's lovely. But yes, what a story to wake up for.
So I was going to say, you've literally just woken up. Go on,
Literally
Will,
just
tell
woken
me.
up.
Reaction. You've literally just heard this news.
So I woke up and obviously my phone has kind of exploded this morning with people asking what on earth is going on and what do you make of it and could you come on this show? And obviously yours is the only one I've responded to, my friend.
Oh, we love you so much, genuinely, Will. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, wild in terms of the impact and in terms of the magnitude of it, and yet not wild when you think of the last 18 months. And I think for a lot of people there would be, the question of why this hasn't happened sooner. And probably a lack of surprise that it has happened at all. The big shock is Christian for the longest time has been Red Bull. He's the only team principal that team has ever known. He has led them through the good times, through the bad times for 20 years. So it has to be more than a simple drop off in performance. They've been there before. They've been through this before. So there must be more. There is more at play here, and I think that's obvious to everyone.
You've just echoed what Betty Glover said about maybe it should have happened sooner. You've echoed what I've said in that it's a surprise in that the timing, but it's not necessarily a surprise in the way Red Bull's performance has fallen in the last 18 months, and obviously the disruption that's happened around the allegations surrounding him, which he denied going back 17 months or so ago. Will, in Silverstone at the weekend, you know better than me how the F1 paddock works. In Silverstone, no one was talking about this. No one was talking about Horner going this week. And that, to me, is the surprising element of this. And I guess why you're saying there's got to be more here.
Yeah, absolutely. These things are usually rumoured. There's usually chatter and talk within the paddock. So the fact that it was on nobody's radar, it will be what is the big surprise here. I mean, look, mate, where do you want to start? Christian, when Christian started out in Formula One, he played the game incredibly well. He was and has always, played the politics of Formula One, perhaps better than anybody over the last 20 years. He aligned himself very early on with Bernie Ecclestone, and that was a very key decision that he took, and a very key and influential ally that he had in those early years.
And we should just say at this point, Will, for people newer to Formula One, Bernie was the former commercial rights holder of Formula One, the former big boss of Formula
I
One,
mean,
effectively.
mate, more than a commercial rights holder, more than the boss of the sport, Bernie was Formula One. If Bernie made a decision, if Bernie wanted something to happen, it happened. He played a role in figuring out which driver was going to go where, which sponsor was going to end up at what team. If Bernie said it happened, it happened. And Christian aligned himself with Bernie very, very early on. And these were in the days when Formula One was known as the Piranha Club. People would get stabbed in the back, left, right, and centre, particularly those in managerial roles at the teams. And Christian really played the politics well. And there's an element here of, live by the sword, die by the sword, because the game has changed. And yeah, the fascinating thing with this is obviously because it's happened so soon, there's no official words about why this has happened. And so everybody is kind of coming to, I think, to the same conclusions, which is that there may be a number of factors in this. One is, and you've already mentioned it, the fall off in competition. And that fall off in competitiveness for Red Bull comes not on the basis of another team doing better, but quite simply the huge exodus of people over the last 2 seasons, from technical roles, moving to other teams. Rob Marshall left to go to McLaren. Jonathan Wheatley left to go to Sauber. Congratulations to them on the podium at Silverstone. They've lost Adrian Newey to Aston Martin. Did Christian replace those people with the right people? Was there the succession plan in place to keep Red Bull at the top? Arguably not, because the fall off has been dramatic. There's Christian's own personal problems over the last 18 months, well documented, and obviously not talked about as much as they could have been because of the nature of them and how litigious it all became. A lot of feeling at the time that would have led to his downfall, but he always had the tie ownership on his side. What's changed? Why are they no longer on his side? And at the base of all of this over the last 18 months has been this swirling talk that actually the people that wanted Christian out more than anybody were the Verstappens. And when I look at the last few months and I look at the Max to Mercedes rumors, and I posted about this the other day. I put a tweet out saying there is politicking in this, because for me the Max to Mercedes thing doesn't weigh up. It doesn't make sense, because I don't think they'd want to get rid of George, and I don't think they want to get rid of Kimi. And if you do get rid of George and you put Max alongside Kimi, the prospect of destroying Kimi, is vast.
There are risks in employing Max Verstappen, is something I said on the pod a couple of weeks ago.
So where have these rumors come from? And I believe there was some politicking in it because, ultimately Toto isn't Christian's best friend. It's interesting that suddenly Christian's gone. I wouldn't be at all surprised if there have been negotiations behind closed doors. Max, what will it take to keep you here at Red Bull? Oh, it's quite easy, actually. Could you get rid of Christian? Of course, Max, whatever you want. And it's done. Look, we don't know. We don't know what it is. But the fact that any one of those elements could have been what led to his downfall is the fascinating thing here.
Is this the right decision from Red Bull Racing?
It's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because the decline has begun. And it began 2 years ago. Whether because of Christian or, Adrian left because of Christian. Is it the right decision? I think ultimately, yes, it's the the right decision. It's a decision that maybe could and arguably should have been made earlier. Is it the right decision for the right reasons at the right time? That's an entirely different question. Because if the team now is at a point where, I mean, look, the second driver equation has reached ludicrous proportions now. If this has been done solely to hold on to Max, and they hold on to Max, great, but where's the basis for a return to competition and competitiveness and championship winning? Because that's not going to happen overnight, and that doesn't happen just by shifting Christian. And this is no longer just a Formula One team. This is a Formula One team. It is now going to be an engine manufacturer as well. It is, Red Bull powertrains, Red Bull Racing, the influence that they held also over, what are we calling it this week?
RB, I believe.
Our Racing Bull. I'm going to call it Racing Bulls.
No, I actually think RB was last year. Sorry. I don't know.
Toro Rosso.
Yeah, whoever it is. I don't know.
And look, Laurent's phenomenal. He's great. And what he's done to turn around Racing Bulls and put them in a place of improved competitiveness is phenomenal. And let's not forget, Christian Horner got the job at Red Bull as a Formula 3000 team boss. He had no Formula One experience. But back then, Mateschitz said, how much money do you need, Christian? And Christian said this much, and Dietrich said, no problem. And that was it. Dietrich held the purse strings. Christian made the decisions. Helmut Marko was there to advise. That was it. It was a simpler time. Since Dietrich's gone, and again, the death of Mateschitz can't be overlooked in all of this either, because as soon as the, it became...
As soon as he passed away, it felt like something changed, didn't it?
Well, yeah, because it became ruled by committee, not ruled by a monarch, and so everything had to get reasoned and argued and approved, and that wasn't the system that Christian was used to. So it's whatever's going to happen. It's a new world order at Red Bull, and it has been since Dietrich's death. But I think it probably is the right thing, and it had to change, and you have to have somebody there who's going to work within the new system, work with Mintslav, and I think somebody as well for the new direction of Red Bull that isn't aligned with the past. So yeah, I think it is right. 20 years, and look, we haven't spoken about it, but an incredible run of success.
Yeah, and we did speak about it on the pod earlier, Will, to be fair. Yeah. You can't take that away from him.
No, you can't. But then there are certain things which end up catching up with you. And you can't escape those things. So the right decision, is it at the right time and for the right reasons? Time will tell. Is it enough to keep Max Verstappen at the team? Let's see if those Max to Mercedes rumours disappear miraculously overnight. And let's see how long it takes them to turn the ship around, mate. But, I mean, you cannot overstate, how seismic this news is in Formula One terms. It's 20 years, man. That's no small amount of time in this sport, and the amount of success that he has brought to that team. But he has also been at the helm and seen everything that he created, and we see it with all the great teams. We saw it at Ferrari, you saw it at McLaren back in the 80s, you saw it at Ferrari in the 2000s. As soon as one of those dominoes goes, and everything starts to fall, then there's no stopping the collapse, and ultimately heads roll.
Will, your insights and opinion has, as ever, been fascinating. I massively appreciate you coming on the podcast, as does Greg, who is on the radio as we have been recording this podcast, and Betty, who is working abroad. We have scrambled, and we appreciate you scrambling as well. Will
Pleasure,
Buxton,
mate.
Please enjoy your lovely day in Florida. We appreciate you.
I'm going to go jump in the pool.
Oh, look. You're an outrageous show-off. Unbelievable. Will Buxton, we love you. Formula One misses you. Speak to you soon, Will.
See you later, buddy. Thanks, mate.
Thank you, Will Buxton. And there he goes, Will Buxton there. Well, listen, we said it was going to be a bit of a scramble emergency episode. Betty scrambling in a hotel room, me running back from the gym, and Will Buxton joining us as he wakes up. Fantastic. I hope you've enjoyed this emergency, The Fast and the Curious. We're going to be back very soon taking a look at F1 Academy with Leah Block. She is on the way. And then after that, we'll be back to, preview the next Grand Prix. And I have a feeling that race preview, which is Belgium, am I right? Yes, the Belgian Grand Prix, will look a little bit more different than what it was going to. We all know what the big story going into that one will be. Any questions, anything you think we've missed, anything you want us to answer for you, we are Fast Curious Pod on all the socials. There is links to buy our new merch, of which you'll be able to see on YouTube. I'm modelling a t-shirt and have a mug as well. You can buy that online. Link is in the description of the episode. And we'll be back very soon on The Fast and the Curious. Thanks for watching and listening. Goodbye.